Some additional info today before we get started. Our guest this week is Nico Barnes. He's the co-founder of a company called Champ. Champ is an online store selling sexual wellness products. And Nico is a good friend of ours. Sean and I are actually both investors in Champ, and they are still in the process of raising money. So if you listen to this episode and that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can contact them at finance@meetchamp.com. Again, that's finance@meetchamp.com. As a disclaimer, I'll say that this is not financial advice of any sort. This is not a solicitation of investment. Champ is a very early stage company, pretty much as early as you can get. And so there are plenty of risks and dangers associated with that. So know those things before you think about investing. And with that out of the way, enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to episode 101 of The Worst People We Know. I'm Jeff Baldwin.
I'm Sean Dullahunt.
And I'm Mike Flynn.
Today we have a special guest. His name is Nico Barnes, a fellow New Jerseyan. Nico holds business degrees from Lehigh University and an MBA from NYU. He has spent close to 10 years in the investment banking industry, has since escaped and was surprised to hear that people in the outside world have lives. He's recently become an entrepreneur. He and two other co-founders started a company called Champ, a sexual health brand selling condoms and lube direct to consumers, much like Dollar Shave Club did for the shaving industry. And we're excited to have him on. We're going to talk about Champ, what launching a business during COVID is like, and his transition from iBanking to working for himself. Nico, welcome to the podcast.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me on. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. I will say, as a disclaimer, both Sean and I are investors in Champ, so we're probably going to paint it in a pretty positive light. But I think it should be. I think it's a good company. So I guess we'll get right into it. Nico, you can. I said health and wellness company selling condoms. I don't know if do you have like a official explanation of what Champ is and what the elevator pitch is?
Yeah. So Champ, as you said, Champ is a sexual wellness business. We are currently selling condoms and lubricants on the website. We've got ultra thin and ribbed condoms, and then we've got silicone and water-based lubricants. That's what we're selling right now. We've been out for about 2 months. We launched about 2 months ago. And we're going to be launching a few more products here in the coming months, but that sums it up very well, Jeff.
Okay. Perfect.
So first question, I imagine that your corporation has a pretty liberal firewall, in terms of the amount of content that you're blocking from your employees.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very, very much so.
Probably helps not having an IT department, too, I imagine.
Yeah.
Well, you did say you were working at a WeWork, right? And
we are working in a WeWork right now.
You had like a bunch of lube on the desk, and you're like, people probably think this is pretty weird, but
people normally turn and walk away when they look in our
what
office.
Percentage of the people at WeWork have a bunch of lube on the desk? Because I imagine that
it's
all of
high.
them do, but only some of them has a
pretty
business.
high.
Yeah.
There's although I would say in the recent weeks there hasn't been all that many people in the WeWork.
Yeah, I can imagine.
As you can imagine.
Yeah. Have you been going?
I've been a couple times.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe because you're kind of sitting there and there's basically no one else in the building. So you're not too worried about getting anything while you're there, because it's like you and there's a couple other people and then the guy at the front desk, but that's about it. So it's a pretty safe environment right now, but only because there's nobody there. But yeah, we're going to be reevaluating that actually though. It's been kind of interesting working at home over these last few months, all kind of in different spots in the kind of tri-state area. But it's worked out. I mean, it's we're a D2C business. We're not in any storefronts or anything right now, so we can work this way pretty seamlessly. I mean, there's nothing. I don't think it kind of replaces the office environment, but I think, it's working out.
Well, the D2C thing is super interesting, and we've talked about it on the podcast before. We we basically were talking about the ones that you get pummeled with over Instagram. But
D2C
why don't you tell us
for direct to consumer for anyone that doesn't know.
Direct to consumer, yeah. So you're not selling through a retail intermediary, or like a channel partner might be what your fancy
Kroger.
business people would call it. Yeah, Kroger. Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know why I wanted to plug them, but I really wanted to.
Well, they're the second largest grocery channel or grocery partner in the country after Walmart. So that's a good one to pick.
Yeah.
They have a lot of banners though. Banners are their various titles and brands of their stores. So like Avon's is a Kroger, and I believe
Ralph's.
Albertsons is
Ralph's
also
is a Kroger.
Ralph's is a Kroger. Yeah. So there's a lot of Kroger. Myers.
Yep.
But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about D2C. So, Nico, like, kind of, how
those
did you
guys are out of
guys
the picture.
come up with? Yeah. How did you guys come up with this? Like, one, how did you pick this as the industry to go into? And then I have some kind of other questions about like the brand origin and stuff. But like, generally, how did you say, hey, sexual wellness? We think there's an opportunity there.
So I'm going to start. I'll start by kind of framing it in my years in banking. I'll frame that question. So.
Yeah, so in case you had the misgiving in the first few minutes of this podcast of thinking, oh, this Nico guy, he sounds nice. He's not. He was an investment banker for like a decade. Terrible person.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean,
That's only because his boss made him be a terrible person, though.
Yeah.
Before
And I imagine that
2010,
during your
I was a
investment
really
banking
great.
days
Yeah, I was like, polar opposite people. No, so I actually started out in always in financial services. And always kind of working with consumer companies, even kind of while I was working just first out of undergrad. But I would say 2010, when I got out of business school, I started working in banking and always with consumer companies. And, when I first started out, all the talk was about companies people and companies growing in emerging markets. So it was all about, growing in the quote unquote BRIC countries, which was Brazil, Russia, India, China. And then I would say 2 years into it, you started seeing, that was always kind of like a conversation. But then at the same time, you started seeing, social media started kind of really taking off. You started seeing, Facebook was, kind of becoming, everyone was on it. And then, you had Instagram as well that was kind of taking off at the time. And those platforms allowed brands to speak a lot more kind of closely and with the customer. And there was more and more advertising opportunities on those platforms. So
just to jump in as a person who worked in the consumer space at that time. So I started working at Heinz around 2008, and I would 100% reaffirm what you just said. Like, the entire strategy for the company was basically take all the cash that we're making from these big brands in America and Western Europe, and then buy a bunch of companies in China, because in China, like, they were just getting grocery infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So you would buy a brand and it would be growing at hundreds of % per year. And in the United States, you'd be lucky if you could grow at 2% for like a mature brand, 2 or 3%, right? And so like that was absolutely the strategy. And, when I was at Heinz, I think I launched the Facebook page for Ore-Ida, and that was 2012 or something. I also probably still have the rights to advertise and post for Ore-Ida because there's no controls over how that works. But
at the time, you were like, why do we have to do this?
Yeah, this is like the constant battle when you're a massive brand, right? So Ore-Ida was like a $600 million in sale brand, is like how much time do you want to spend on these little things, but that are growing quickly? Like they're insignificant in what this particular year is, but if you don't get them on them at the right time, when do you do that, right? But like Facebook had just launched product pages at that time, and like they had, I don't even know if they had a self-serve advertising platform, and certainly even if they did, we weren't as a big CPG even set up to figure out how to like like nobody has a credit card that they're throwing down on that, and Facebook wasn't like figuring out
Yeah.
like how to invoice. It was the wild west.
Yeah.
The thing to do at the time was to run a promotion where you crashed your Facebook page. It was like, oh, if you crash your Facebook page,
That's
wow,
good.
you did a good job.
Yeah.
You did. That was a good thing. You had enough people who were following it.
Yeah. So you had that dynamic, and I think people were very focused on growing emerging markets, and there's certainly good reasons for doing that. But while that was happening, you started seeing brands popping up online. I think the one that you guys mentioned earlier, Dollar Shave Club, is one of the first ones. They did some great ads on YouTube, and they kind of they went pretty viral pretty quickly. They were funny ads. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And then it kind of kept growing as I was working in the space. And you started to see, I think shaving was one where you saw companies kind of have some success early on. Mattresses is one that I thought was interesting. I mean, who would have thought that you'd have in 2010, I wasn't thinking about having a mattress delivered in a box to my apartment. I remember actually trying to get my roommate's mattress into our apartment, which is interesting in a little apartment in Soho. But yeah, I mean, there was a number of different companies popping up, and they were talking about how great their growth was. And I mean, it's across other personal care products. I think makeup was another one that was really interesting, especially when. It was interesting to me when somebody showed me that, on your phone, you can basically, put the makeup on your face, on your face, and you can see how it looks. And there was a lot of YouTube videos out there, for people and women to see how to put on different makeups and stuff. So there was like all this stuff that was happening in social media, and online that was really allowing a lot of brands that, to kind of take off. And so, I think, the emerging market story was a good one. And I think that there's still some validity to it. I think that there's also a lot of, there's a lot of issues with going into new countries and starting or trying to grow your brands.
It's almost as if China isn't like a developed democracy where they do everything fairly.
Brazil.
Yeah, well, there's that issue. I mean,
Brazil's
just the
great.
culture. So I remember, I was talking to somebody about the growth story in China as we were looking at a company. I can't remember what we were evaluating it for, but we were looking at it, and they were kind of explaining the growth story. And he said, but the big issue is that I think it was like an egg substitute or something, and they were cracking they're like people in China, a lot of stores there. They take, instead of the egg substitute, they'll just crack 2 eggs and put it in a container and put it on the shelf. It's just like those types of things.
Yeah, and they'll tell you it's a substitute.
Yeah, I mean, they're
massive fraud. Like if you're talking about organics, like organic, you prove that something's organic from China. Good freaking luck.
Yeah, well, it's not just China's one place, but there's other countries as well, and it's just not as easy as it sounds, even when you're a big brand, because there are so many different obstacles, whether it's the government, whether it's consumer habits, and so I think that there was a lot of focus there. And meanwhile, there was a lot of companies that were, having a lot of small companies that were having a lot of success online, and just speaking directly to customers. Customers really liked it. I think that they appreciated having that kind of getting that instantaneous feedback from people about the products and their experiences with the product. I think a lot of the DTC, the advantage in DTC is that you do have that direct communication with the customer, where it kind of, as Mike, you said before, you're kind of taking out the middleman. So, I saw this all coming, kind of happening while I was in banking, and my co-founder and I worked together, and we would constantly have conversations about the types of businesses we want to start. And
you kept pushing condoms, and you kept saying no.
Yeah, so there was a lot of different ideas thrown around, and then one day he comes to me and he says, "I think condoms are a good idea." And I said, "Alan, do we look like the kind of guys that could start, a condom business?" and so But I think that therein lies part of the problem. I think this is a product that everybody uses, at some point in their life. And so as we kind of dug into the category more, we felt as though there was an opportunity to speak directly to the consumer, and develop some trust there, and so that was kind of our first thoughts around what is now Champ, so that's kind of our evolution around it. I'll say that there's certain characteristics, I would say, of certain industries that make direct-to-consumer kind of, I would say, more facilitated. So I think, stuff that's easy to mail, for instance, is something.
So I mean, just to interrupt you real quick, but like I think the thing that this is what you just said, like things that are easy to mail, right? Like that was Bezos. Was
not all of it is.
Why would I
Mattresses aren't that easy to mail, but
no. But I think like that's like a great feature in terms of like, hey, like if you're going to launch something, it would be great if you had that, right? That's one of the reasons he chose books was, books don't go stale. They could be in a warehouse for forever, right? Whatever, and reasonably inexpensive to mail. But what I think is interesting about your product category is it's pretty, like, if you think about like Hims and Hers, which is basically generic Viagra. They recently went public at $1.6 billion valuation, and like they're only a company for 3 years. But similar to condoms, it's a product that is maybe embarrassing for some people to go get and go into a store. And I think that that's what's interesting about Champ as a D2C or get it in the mail versus like, I mean, I can remember in high school that there was, when we were maybe 14 or 15, one of our friend's older brothers used to make him go in to buy the condoms for him because he was embarrassed. And it was like, we're concerned, like we lived in a small town, like somebody would tell his mom that he was buying condoms or who knows what,
Yeah. And it's funny. So we started looking into that experience now. I certainly agree with what you're saying. I think we all know there's a local pharmacy there, and it's like, I know half the people in the store right now.
Right. You're buying them from your friend who's working the counter.
Yeah. We're buying them for somebody else that's, I can't tell you who they are because you'll probably
I never
call
got
them
on the PA system and said, Nico Barnes purchasing
you worked there.
extra
you
small
there.
condoms.
I forgot about that. But so and we went, and I would say in an urban setting, maybe it's slightly less. You feel more like a rural suburban type of town where you kind of know everybody. But even in an urban setting, there's a lot. You see issues around it. So there's those cases now where products are behind, and there's issues with people stealing products out of some of these stores. Some drug stores.
So you got to ask somebody.
It's
annoying in general and embarrassing.
Yeah,
too.
And some of these
it's either
products,
locked up or you're in some bodega where you're like, this has probably been here for 7 years. How do I feel about that?
Yeah. So there are barriers, or not barriers, but there are things that make the experience less than enjoyable. There's reasons for those barriers to be there. It happens to be one item that people do steal from stores, and so that was another thing where we saw that the in-store experience was tough, and it's also, I think, another thing about D2C is that you can kind of sit there online and you kind of look at the products that you're going to buy, and you can read about them, and you can look them up, and you can do all these different things. It can be overwhelming going to a store when you're going to buy a product, and you see so many different options on the shelf. I know that people, they kind of have a habit of going to get the same thing over and over again, but it is overwhelming when you sit back and you're looking at a lot of different products there.
It's overwhelming already, right? Like any of those products, shampoo, deodorant, it's overwhelming. Condoms the same way. But also, you don't want to be sitting there loitering in front of the condom rack, like going through each one. So it's even more so, like it's like you'll just pick the one you recognize fast and move on.
Yeah, exactly. You are looking for certain ones when you go in the store. So, you know, and you're just trying to find that condom, you know, and so that was that I think is one of the first things that we saw. I think also as you think about the online purchasing experience, you know, Amazon is a great place for a lot of things, and I think it's not so private. As you know, when you start actually going on there, I mean, you know, we have one Amazon Prime account.
Your family's account.
Yeah,
Your
I mean, there's a
mom
lot of
starts
different
getting
people.
recommendations for the condoms that you got or the lube. That's maybe not great.
Exactly. So you're sitting there and you're like, you know, it's not that private. I mean, there's a lot of people that use our Prime account. In fact, I don't even know how many people you're using our Amazon Prime account. So it's not all that private, and you also get, you know, retargeted with certain things as well. And so, you know, from that aspect, you know, there's always a story about, you know, something in somebody's Amazon history that they wish wasn't there. You know, I think, you know, a lot of people have those stories, but so that purchasing experience, it's also there's been some press. I don't know if you guys, you know, you've probably seen it in the Journal and a few other places, but you know, some of the things that pop up on Amazon are coming through third-party resellers, and a lot of times it doesn't matter in a lot of categories. But I think in this category, you want to make sure it works, even though it's a purchase. It's not a big purchase. You know, there's a
people
reason.
who don't know what that means. Third-party resellers. I believe more than half of the products sold on Amazon are not actually, you know, like Amazon is not controlling the inventory, like they're not guaranteeing the quality of it. It's some independent person
It's like
or
a marketplace
entity that is selling on through Amazon, right? And so that just increases a risk factor as a consumer to say, okay, this is not, you know, we assume that we can trust Bezos and his $110 billion, that he's like, you know, is trying to protect that and not get sued. But, you know, Joe Schmo, who's got it on the platform, then, you know, again, like, where did he get this stockpile of condoms and how long has he held it?
Right.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And it's just a question of certain things. I think, you know, when you're buying paper towels, for instance, you know, you're not so worried about that type of thing. But this is just a category where,
Amazon's
I've also
not
found
quite
that
paper towels
ideal.
Not a very effective against STDs or stopping pregnancy.
Wait, what?
I mean, it depends if you get the extra absorptive, but like generally not what you want to do.
I wouldn't recommend that.
You can't screw up the shipping of paper towels, right? Like they don't get damaged. I feel like if I got a box of condoms that was smushed in like an envelope in USPS, like I'd be like, it shouldn't matter, but it matters for some reason.
Yeah.
So
the cost factor of this going wrong is infinite.
Yeah. So you know, like I think Amazon's great, but you know, just felt like it wasn't the ideal solution necessarily in this situation, but. You know, I think, you know, as you know, we also thought it was a category where there was a chance to kind of, you know, provide some advice, provide a little bit more. Maybe we're trying to come at this in an approachable type of voice. And that's what, you know, we're called Champ. We're trying to make sure that it's positive, and that people, you know, people feel comfortable coming to us because, you know, this isn't something that, you know, that's what we felt as though. There could be more of in the category.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the way we look at it. You know, we're all our products are top notch, and yeah, we're you know, we're starting out. We've loved you know so far.
Let me ask another question for a second.
Go ahead.
So you guys sell condoms and lube. Those are the two products, basically the two product categories right now in sexual wellness?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So, as a selfish teenage lover, which was when I was using condoms, I have 2 kids now, so I no longer have sex. But back when I had sex and I used condoms, I don't know that I ever purchased lube. It may have come free in a dual pack, but is that something that like is very common that to get to purchase together, and like, I mean, you guys have kind of different ways of selling and packaging stuff, but yeah, tell me about the Lube Market.
So the lube market, is an interesting one. So I think, as you pointed out, I think it's something that, as when we were younger, it wasn't something that we were thinking about. I think there's two primary markets here that it serves. There's there's women, and then there's also the buyers, and then there's also the gay community, which are buyers here. And so that's we also want this to be an inclusive brand. So we've that was one of the reasons for offering that. We also see that we are targeting, it's more of a male focused brand, but we also do see an opportunity here to increase the usage of lubricants. We think that it's once people actually try it, you can see on our site we've got a kind of a starter kit that we're selling there, and we encourage people to use it. I mean, it's our product is hypoallergenic, free of glycerin, parabens, all that good stuff. And we think that there's an opportunity there to kind of raise awareness about it, and its uses. And it's also, it's a market that has kind of increased in size in the U.S. And even outside the U.S.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, do you guys want to? I mean, I don't know if you have more questions, Jeff or Sean, about Champ specifically, or maybe ask some questions about entrepreneurship.
We could do. I did want to cover the branding of Champ in general, because I know you guys spent some time, like a lot of time on that. I think the brand is a very nice. It's like the packaging, the logo. Meetchamp.com is their website, right? If people want to
meetchamp.com.
look at the brand.
Yes,
but
that's right.
It's approachable and it's sort of discreet, I guess. Like, right? Wasn't that like what you were going for?
Yeah. I think we wanted to make sure it was discreet. I think we wanted to make sure that it was discreet, but it was also somewhere that we wanted to be a positive. So what we did was we looked at thousands of names as we were coming up with this.
Naming a company is freaking impossible, even when it's just for yourself. It's difficult.
Yeah. Can
you share some of the worst ones, or are they too painful?
It's just it would go on for too long if I talked about all those names. But I can say that we saw this as an opportunity, as I said, to keep it positive. This is actually Champ. If you go to meetchamp.com, you look at About Us. It was actually a brand that was out in the 1950s. And it was a condom brand that was out in the 1950s, and it had the likeness of kind of Ted Williams and a few other guys on the packaging, a few other sports heroes on the packaging at that time, and we thought that it was interesting that they were able to do that. I don't think we could do that today without getting people's permission. But we're kind of introducing it today, reintroducing it to today's man. In as you said, Jeff, like a positive but discreet, approachable manner.
And like packaging, I think is somewhat fascinating. I think Mike, you've talked about this in the past, but like if you're doing direct to consumer and you're not doing something that needs to sit on a shelf in like a pharmacy, like you don't have to have it say scream like look at me, like pick me. It's a sparkly box. Like you can actually have it be discreet. This is something that maybe you want to have in your medicine cabinet and not have like a sparkly box that draws attention to it.
Yes, that's exactly right. You do when you're on a shelf in a store. Mike knows this well from his days at Heinz. But there you need to kind of stand out, and you have to make sure that people know what it is and all that stuff. And so that's a really important on shelf. But it doesn't always translate well to when it's actually in your house or your apartment or whatever. And so, that was one of the things here where we wanted to make sure that we had a nice aesthetic. I think the boxes look great, and they are kind of on the simpler side. And I think you see that kind of across. If you look at DTC brands, you'll see that they do tend to look a bit more like they do tend to have a simpler look to them.
They do. They look more mature.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
like that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we were. Yeah, that's kind of what we were were going for, and one of the things we spend a lot of time on.
Nice. Should we launch into entrepreneurship here?
Well, I was going to ask, do you think Ted Williams, do you think if he gets uncriogenic frozen, he could come back to endorse the new champ?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If he comes back, we'll be the first ones to approach him, you know.
He would be so confused.
Wait, what? What happened to my condom brand?
Social media.
Yeah. Instagram. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you have something specific, entrepreneurship, Mike? Or should I?
Well, I mean, just like in general, it's your life, I imagine, Nico, has changed significantly from when you were going into an investment bank. And I imagine, your managing director, every day you would walk in would be asking what your, emotionally where you are on a scale of 1 to 10, and if you were feeling zen, and asking about your family and making sure that you were spending enough time with them. And I imagine as an entrepreneur that you maybe don't get that positive affirmation that you were getting within the very healthy banking community. So being an entrepreneur, the people who are hosting this podcast are all entrepreneurs in different ways. There are elements that are stressful. Certainly, one of them is the lack of somebody else writing you a check every 2 weeks, which is I find to be quite helpful actually in paying
nice.
Other bills from other people who request checks on similar time frames, which is quite frustrating, like banks. But if you just want to talk about that transition, what feels different about it, what has been surprising of going from big Fortune 500 corporate job to, 3 guys grinding it out.
Yeah. So they would always ask me how I was doing. There was always that question when I was in banking.
They would never wait for an answer, but they would always ask.
And why did you go home to sleep?
Why did you?
Like you kind of alluded to, banking was an interesting job. I learned a ton while I was doing it. There certainly was lifestyle differences. You find that there's a lot, even as an entrepreneur, you're kind of waiting for things. And I think, it's not the same kind of cadence of work where you're kind of just continuing to work. It is certainly different. Both have their stressors. And I'm not gonna lie. I'd sit here that I was, 5 years ago, I was going to be like, oh, I'm going to start my own business. Now I'd thought about it a lot, but it wasn't something that I had thought that I would be doing. I think
because your boss said you weren't allowed to.
That's right. Yeah.
Now I think
you would think about it if you ever got off of the BlackBerry.
Yeah. I think that I saw the opportunity come across to do something, and we'd seen so many of these. We'd seen a lot of different successes, and you see all these. It's kind of inspirational when you sit there and you are working with people who own their companies, and they're going to sell them, or they want to do something with their business, and you see that, and you're kind of like, I really do want to try that, but you just never think that you're actually going to do it, and then. As Alan and I talked more and more about this idea, we thought that it was worth taking a shot at it, and we thought that there genuinely was a gap that needed to be filled, and there was an opportunity to make a difference. So that was kind of it. It wasn't like I'd always throughout my whole life had thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur. It was kind of I saw an opportunity to do something. I had a little bit of inspiration from the background and the people that I'd seen. And I said, it's now or never. That was kind of the attitude I took. I've learned a ton over the last, the time I've been doing this. And so I think it's certainly been it's not easy, no doubt about it. I don't think anyone would ever say that, but it is, it's certainly, I've learned a lot, and I feel like I'm progressing in my career, if that makes sense.
Where instead of just executing the same thing that you've done for 10 years, you're like, oh, this is something that's different.
Yeah, and and there's a lot of things that you didn't think that you think about that you actually have to spend a lot more time on. Like, for instance, packaging is something where there's a little bit more to it than I had could have originally ever imagined. No.
Well, in that extent, like, was this whole thing scary? Because you do go, a corporate job, you're basically, there's always someone to ask if, like, you need to execute, but, like, you have directions and you can give directions, and like that, there's a very well-maintained system. And now, you and two other guys are like, hey, do marketing, do packaging, do logistics, do sourcing, do like all this stuff. Oh, and by the way, do it during COVID.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I mean, there was a lot. So there's a lot of that, trying to figure stuff out. I mean, every day it's like there's something you don't know. There's something that none of us know. I wouldn't say that banking, there's always like there was a lot of things you had to figure out on the job as well. But now you're right. Like there's always something every day that we don't like have the immediate answer to. I would say the DTC industry has it. So as it's kind of progressed, let's say through the years, I think even over this 10-year kind of evolution, you've seen more and more kind of companies come out that service, and frankly freelancers that come out and they are working and looking to work with the DTC brands. There's and that's another thing that I guess we didn't really touch on before, but with all these different social medias, all these different ways to contact people, like even LinkedIn is actually a pretty good resource. For if you don't know an answer to something, there's chances are that somebody knows somebody that does. So you can actually, we're working with a lot of third parties and leveraging a lot of other people's knowledge when we don't necessarily have it, right off the top of our hand, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hear that, Jeff? LinkedIn.
That's it. That's all you need. Lately. That's it.
Yeah.
No,
were you guys thinking about expanding your networks? Is that why?
Yeah. I've always taken the Jack Donaghy approach to turning my nose up at LinkedIn, but I don't know. I did too. A lot of buzz these days.
I did too, and it's been helpful. It's not just that. I mean, it's like a network, and as you start talking to one person in DTC, whether it's like a person that does the boxes, or it's a person that that's in fulfillment, or it's a person that's even manufacturers themselves are more and more now looking to partner with DTC brands because they see it as an opportunity for their businesses to grow. So
that makes sense.
It's we've seen a lot of receptivity when we've reached out to people in this area.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about it from the perspective of like a Fortune 500 company, right? Typically, if you're talking about people who work or have decision-making power at a Fortune 500 company, you're not talking about necessarily the most adventurous humans in the world. You're talking about people who
like
went to college, then went to one of 15 business schools, and then decided to make their entire career in the exact same company, like murdering other people and getting ahead. And that's a fun thing to do occasionally, and like for a stretch of time, and for some people who have are sociopaths. Mm-hmm. But again, like they're not about risk necessarily, right? And so like at Heinz, I was there for 5.5 years, and in North America, we launched 0 new brands. Like that wasn't a thing. Like where you launch a new brand, right? What you would do, you would a line extension. Like the big innovations that we would have would be, we have a steak sauce. Now we have a thick steak sauce.
Ooh. Yeah.
we have a crinkle cut fry. Now we have a steak cut fry. This is like, I mean, crazy risk that we're like throwing out there on the table, but that's how we are. We're just nutty, right?
That's it's interesting. You say like, sorry, go ahead. Just to cut you off. No, I think that's interesting. You say that like It's also really hard. So, I think a lot of times you see like co-branding in from big companies like that. It's really hard to start to have a new brand and kind of launch something brand new in a category. I find, one of the ones that I always thought was interesting was, I thought Chobani was a great, we're kind of beyond Greek yogurt at this point, but onto like the new things or something else.
Beyond Greek yogurt.
But like Yoplait tried to come out with like a Greek yogurt. Yoplait tried to come out with a Greek yogurt, and it's just like it was just weird. And it was that's Yoplait. It's yogurt. It's not Greek yogurt. And there's
right. you're holding all of this, like they would call it brand equity, right?
Yeah.
But the brand equity also is a drag because people associate the name with something else, right? And so if you think about what I always used to say about Heinz, right, is like, oh, it's a food company or it's a brand and it means something to consumers, great. But like in reality, when you're on the inside, it's a machine. And tomatoes go in one end and money comes out the other. And the point is to make more money come out the end of the machine, whether that means that you're putting more tomatoes in or less tomatoes, the same amount of money. It doesn't make a difference. You just need more money coming out the end of the machine. And so that's when you think about them, like these big companies, they're basically all banks, right? And they're just trying to make more return. And so how do you do that? Like D2C companies are actually great because versus, oh, I have to try and develop this product inside of my company. Like there's all these other drags on it, like culturally, right? Where it's like inside of Heinz, I wasn't getting rewarded for taking risks. It was like, no, dummy. Like a spelling error is something that would maybe hold back your career for a year. It's like you sent an email that was grammatically incorrect. Like I couldn't tell you how long it took me to write emails to people who were above me because
I can't tell you the last time I wrote a grammatically correct email. I've given up.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't even think of this. Is like you waste
English.
So much time on that. I could not tell you how many hours when I was working for Heinz I spent making sure that icons were lined up inside of a PowerPoint deck because you're giving presentations to people who are in charge of your career that have very few interactions with you before they have to make a decision of whether you're going to get promoted or not, right? So like going to say, hey, I'm going to go launch this thing that has an 80% chance of failure is like not a lot of people signing up for that.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who's in charge and you say, hey, we can invest in this D2C brand, then you don't have to worry about any of that cultural weight and like that screwed up stuff that's like going down. It's just like, hey, I'm putting money over here versus trying to spend $60 million to launch a brand.
Yeah. You see a lot of that. You see a lot of that now in those, those companies have kind of their venture arms and stuff like that to help solve for that.
That's something I always was wondering, right? It's like every time these like small, startup-y brands come out, you're like, why wouldn't someone like Heinz or whatever, whoever is in that industry just crush them because they've got all the resources in the world to like, oh, if this is getting traction, just start your own version of that. But what you guys are saying is exactly the case, right? Like, no, they're just going to wait till it gets big enough and they're going to buy it because they can do that.
Yeah, there's that. But as I was saying before, so there are some barriers that are tough to get through. I think even when you're talking about ketchup, like, it weighs a lot and it's still, and it's something that people do buy when they're grocery shopping, which for whatever reason seems like people still do a lot of, people still do a lot of stuff. Most shopping still occurs in store. But
it's the only activity we're allowed to do anymore, at least in California.
It's essential activities only.
It's like true. My highlight of the week.
Yeah. But there's certain, I think beverage is another one. I think they've started coming out with other ways, but the distributors there, you have to have the distribution network. It has to be sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's tough to deliver this stuff to people. People are trying to get around that by doing the formula that you just kind of put into a glass of water or whatever, because that's a lot lighter. But yeah, no, there's it's interesting.
Powdered ketchup.
Powdered ketchup.
Yum.
So like it's funny because like there are things that happen where you're like, I don't believe that this will work, and then like somebody will end up doing it because they have nothing to lose. But like, one of those things with ketchup, we never did powdered ketchup to my knowledge, thankfully. And I can't imagine there's a lot of nutritional value in that. Not that there isn't ketchup. But one of the things that they did do was they have like pouches. So like there's a lot of things that people buy, food that people buy in pouches.
I showed you.
Right?
I bought a barbecue sauce that was really good in a pouch.
Did you?
I sent you guys a picture a little while back.
How does that work?
We used to sell.
It's like a.
What do you mean? How's it work?
It's a cap, and the top is just a big pouch. So it's kind of like a toothpaste container.
Oh, okay.
But even
I was
flimsier.
thinking like Capri Sun, and then once you
once
you put the straw in,
put your straw in, you suck out all the ketchup. It's great.
Anyone who's had like a baby, anyone who has a kid who's under 5, like knows like all of these baby food pouches or like little kid foods.
It's got a solid spout.
They suck.
But the rest of it, it's like those plastic water bottles that were selling at SFO, right? That kind of fold down. Mm-hmm. It's like that.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So when I was at Heinz, there was a big launch because like that packaging is significantly less expensive than a traditional. They call them PET bottles, a plastic bottle that you would buy like normal ketchup in. And they tried to launch pouch ketchup because they sold it in Latin America because they have to like Latin America. There's a lot less income, so they have to figure out ways to take costs out of the product.
How do you store in the
bring
fridge?
This to America.
How do you store that in the fridge? Like you just stick it in the fridge?
It's a stand-up pouch. It's a stand-up pouch.
Okay.
Do you guys want me to get up and go get my barbecue sauce so you guys can see?
Yeah, go get your BB's. Go get your BB.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah.
This will be great for the listeners. No, we'll describe it to them.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if any of you guys buy Method, but like the Method refills. Yeah. So like that, it's a pouch like that. That's what I would.
Well, these days too, it's kind of like a environmentally friendly thing too, right? Like you're saying.
Yeah, I think like
less packaging.
Society has moved into that world, right?
Yeah.
So guys, it's almost empty, but you can see this is the package,
and it still stands up.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom is like this solid base.
There you go.
Oh. Well, I got to tell you, that's a pretty solid.
It's a solid
cap you got there.
And then this is I can't tell.
Now it's all over his desk.
I don't want to be dropping inside information, but like that's we would call that a stand-up cap.
Yeah.
And in the Heinz world, because we have the upside down ketchup, right?
Yep.
That a cap that size, that's probably 5 cents a cap.
Yeah.
If you have a regular sized cap that like for a regular like right side up ketchup, that's like a penny. So,
Mike, these
guys are making some serious cap investments.
Yeah, this is organic, vegan, gluten free, every non-GMO, all the labels you can put on a food thing.
Yeah.
$7 barbecue sauce from Whole Foods. I don't think they care about a 5 cent cap.
4 cent, yeah.
How's it work as a lube?
What's that?
Yeah.
Is barbecue sauce?
Not as well as Champ. We can say that.
The ginger.
We didn't look into the barbecue sauce.
A little spicy.
So other questions we have in this outline here: whose MBA is better, Nico's or Mike? That's actually a trick question because I helped Nico write his essay for business school, and he also still owes me 10% of his original signing bonus, which is what I quoted him.
I didn't use that essay.
Suspect.
Why does this essay keep talking about Mike Flynn? This is a weird thing.
How great his hair is and how above average it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So what is next for Champ here, Nico? So you've got condoms, you've got lube, like sexual health, like I like how you've kind of defined it because that's a little bit broader. You guys could go in other areas. What are you guys trying to do in the short term?
Yeah, well, so short term, right now, we've launched 2 months ago. So right now we are optimizing. So I'll just kind of give you an idea of some of the things we're doing.
Sure.
So, I think the first thing is optimizing the website, making sure, there's certain things I think that we'd like to do after looking at it and getting some, people's thoughts that haven't seen the site. When you've been kind of in the weeds for the last 6 months or whatever, you kind of forget some of that. You lose that perspective of the person that's just come to visit your site. So working on that stuff, we're starting kind of a test and learn influencer campaign. So we're learning about that. We are looking at additional products. We'll be adding some products to the site. here in the coming weeks and months. And it'll
condom products. Are there things you're not ready to tell us about?
No, so it'll be
barbecue sauce in a bag,
sexual wellness. Additional condoms are probably one area that we think is interesting for sure. And there's also a couple others as well. So we're gonna be doing that. And I'd say, we're trying to make sure here that we are, our service is working well. That I think we kind of got that under control. But we're always looking to kind of optimize the supply chain, if you will, as well. So
I did want to sort of touch on the supply chain thing. So we've mentioned a couple of times now, like you're a 3-person company. Now there's 3 founders. I think you do have other people working for you, but you guys aren't like manufacturing, like you don't have a warehouse, you don't have things that you own. I don't think a lot of people sort of grasp that concept completely. Like they think everyone that sells something is like making it and shipping it. And what is your supply chain?
So our supply chain, we work with some of the top manufacturers in the condom industry and the lubricant industry, and so they're manufacturing for us. We then use a fulfillment center not too far away from the tri-state area, and the goods are ultimately shipped there from the manufacturing centers, and then from there, we're close to it, so we can get there whenever we have to. But the orders are then shipped from that location.
So you're basically partnering with people that do this on a larger scale, essentially.
Yeah, we're making sure that we're working with the best partners that are out there in all cases.
Yeah. So similar question regarding just kind of facilities. Do you guys have your lube wrestling matches on, is that at the WeWork, or
it is?
Do you guys do
it
them
is.
at
It's at the
private
WeWork.
houses? How do you do that social distancing?
Everywhere and anywhere?
Yeah.
Well, it's yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons why people were kind of walking away from our offices as they would walk towards ours. Now, it's been more difficult since
shirtless lube wrestling on a Thursday morning. Yeah, I could understand how maybe that is less popular with the other inhabitants of the shared workspace.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No, so we were working in the WeWork, and then all this kind of COVID stuff hit, and we've been working. I've been in there a couple times, but more or less we've been working from home. I think everybody's been talking about it, all the great things, all the great services that are out there now for people working in that environment. So it's been pretty seamless, I'd say. As I kind of mentioned, I think at the beginning of the podcast, it's not quite exactly the same. But
are you guys thinking about, we covered on a recent episode, I think it was VMware and some other companies were talking about cutting pay since their employees aren't going to the office anymore. Is that something you guys have considered?
Oh yeah. Well, we are, we think about that all the time. Not something that we're thinking about right now. It's not top of mind. There's not much pay to cut, so.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You guys have more questions, or you want to move on to recos?
I'm ready to move on. Sean? No?
No? Yeah.
Okay.
Recommendations.
Oh, mine. So I recently listened to the Sway podcast with Kara Swisher. I know.
And this is not the former MTV VJ Sway.
This is
This is
the tech journalist Kara Swisher from the New York Times.
Okay.
Who
understood?
What was the podcast you really loved of hers, Mike?
Pivot.
So I didn't.
Well, these movement-based podcasts.
Well, that one, yeah. So I didn't love that one. I think mostly because it was like a very they trashed a lot of people, and it was a lot of opinion.
Well, they stole our ideas a lot.
Well,
I think they covered all the same stuff that we did, but we published less frequently.
That's very true. And somehow they're more famous. I don't get it, but. I listened to an episode where she interviewed Elon Musk, which is why I listened to it. And I have to say, she's a very good interviewer. as much as I thought she was going to be like super opinionated and kind of annoying, she was not at all. She like let him talk, but she also asked the hard questions, but in a good way that like made him answer them.
It's weird when you've been a journalist and interviewer for 30 plus years, you get good at stuff.
Apparently.
I don't like doing stuff for more than a couple of years at a time, so that's the problem. But good for you, Kara. So that's the Sway Podcast.
Sway Podcast, yep. That's mine.
Shwaney?
Ghost Town Living, an awesome YouTube channel that my friend Jeff Baldwin tipped me off to about a guy that bought an abandoned California mining town, a ghost town.
We were looking at it when it was on sale.
We were looking at it.
It's $1 million bucks for a ghost town in the California mountains.
So he's been there for about 6 months, started living there full time right when this pandemic started, and has put out maybe like half dozen or a few more videos. But check it out. A few of them are pretty short. Some of them are pretty freaky. He goes and explores these mines that I would have no desire to crawl into, or like he crawls in this little hole that he can barely squeeze through, and then he's just down in there. I'm like, how would I know how to get back out? I'd be panicked the whole time I was in there.
He's in a town like miles up a dirt road from anything, because you can go visit it.
Sierra Gordo
is the name of it. Yeah, yeah. It's near Mount Whitney.
By
Nico,
Whitney
you've been there.
and Lone Pine.
Yeah.
So it was a place that I think Sean and I wanted to go visit when we were in Lone Pine area camping one time, but it's far away. And so he's in a town with no one around, and then he goes miles away from like the houses in the town and crawls into a mine.
These collapsed
by
mines.
himself.
It's
like freaking crazy. Anyway, it's
as long as he still posts videos, we'll know he's okay, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. But if you owned a ghost town, or were dreaming of owning a ranch, much like some of the people on this podcast, one of the ways that you might prepare for that is by watching episodes of This Old House, which just started season 42.
Wow.
So 42 years of these old houses. Some of the houses that were new when they started are now are eligible to be covered in this season because they're 42 years old now.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. So this is something that is a program that you can act like. I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. My wife and I can actually turn on, and there's not a lot of swearing. There's no discussion of lube. And so you could just throw on this old house.
Those carpenters are pretty crafty with things and would even use lube for like an old hinge or something.
Oh yeah,
there might be
one guy who's like
opportunity
the plumbing guy, and he always drops like some great quotes. He's like, "Oh, this is the classic plumber's lament." He has these great turns of phrases. So yeah. Anyway, it's entertaining. If you're embracing your growing old personness, This Old House is a fine show, and you also learn a little bit about building stuff and new products that are coming out. I'm sure that's how they pay for the program. Is these guys who have a new countertop material, pay them to show it. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, This Old House.
And viewers like you.
And viewers like me, promoting it on their very, very popular podcasts. Nico, do you have any recommendations?
Well, I was just trying to think of any of the old MTV VJs that I could that had anything that came out recently.
Kurt Loder's not a VJ. He was on the news. Kennedy is on Fox News all the time.
Yeah.
Seriously?
They've got a weird line.
Yeah, she has a show called Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Yeah.
I went back. I looked at
uber conservative.
What was that? MTV Sports with Dan Cortese.
Oh, yeah.
Is that?
Dan Cortez.
Dan Cortez. Yeah, that's right.
He's probably
I don't know what he's doing
anymore,
these days,
right?
though.
When you said This Old House, I wondered if Bob Vila was alive. This is a good reco tangent.
Yeah. Dan Cortez. I'm going to throw it out here. How old do you think Dan Cortez is?
50?
50. I say closer to 60. Wait. So
he's 53.
53?
He's 53.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not
He's
bad.
from Swickley, PA.
Swickley.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that he was from PA.
No.
He played Perry Rollins on Veronica's Closet.
Oh.
And Vic Mulatto on What I Like About You.
Who would have known?
Yeah. Yeah, first came to prominence as the host of the Emmy Award-winning MTV Sports. Emmy Award-winning from 92 to 97. Hey, this is also important.
That was a cool
and
show.
This is the second line
Yeah,
of
I love
his
that show.
career on Wikipedia. Cortez was also the player coach of the Bricklayers and the Homeboys on MTV Rock and Jock Games.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
My recommendation is watching those again. Those old Rock and Jock games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that should be. Can you imagine if you like scoring on the 50-foot high hoop? That thing was worth a lot of points.
I think I watched one of those for like more than half an hour too.
Oh yeah, I would watch a Rock and Jock softball game right now. That would be like, you know.
All right.
I go Fargo. I started watching that during all the pandemic, and then the new season just came out. So
Is that on Netflix?
it's on FX.
FX. Okay. Is it like the movie?
No. So each season. So it's like. So there's been 4 seasons, and each season is kind of it's kind of like a whole new
anthology.
Yeah, a whole
Kind
new
of like
cast,
a
but it's
True
always
Detective
good.
situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's got like the whole like Fargo, like there's like a
There's
dark
some
comedy.
connection between them all.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a connection, but they're all like kind of supposed to be based on true stories, but they all kind of happen in the Midwest.
They're
But
all
yeah,
in a
no,
cold place.
Like you could just watch this current season, not have to watch.
you wouldn't have to watch the other ones.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't.
Okay.
This one has Chris
corn
Rock.
and soy centric.
This one has Chris Rock in it, and it has the guy from
yeah,
Bored
I
to
saw
Death. Who's the guy from Bored to Death?
Jason Schwartzman.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he's in it too. So
Bored
it's like,
to Death is a good one too.
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't seen either of those. I'll have to check those out. Shameless plugs.
Yeah, shameless plugs, Jeff.
Mine is thebubbleboard.com. If you follow the stock market at all, it's a stock visualization tool. So check it out. It's free at thebubbleboard.com.
Dashy-dash.com. Sorry, Sean. Did I just jump right over you? I sure did.
We have outlines, but this is your time, Mike.
I'm gonna step back in line. I'm gonna let Sean do his shameless plug.
twpwk.com and YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. We'll have a link in the show notes. Like us, subscribe us, leave some comments. Let us know what you want to see. All that stuff. I'm not crawling through any
If you've
minds for
gotten
you
to
guys.
this point, in the podcast, you're probably somebody who listens to an hour and 30 minutes worth of content. But in case you run into a weird week where you have stuff to do, we also publish summaries of our episodes on YouTube. So that's new. And you can maybe get it done in 4 minutes and hear about where you can jump in, because we kind of say, hey, we talked about this starting at this minute. So it's a nice little tool for you. So check it out. Check out the YouTube channel. Anywho, my shameless plug, dashy-dash.com. It's where restaurants go to get insights about what's happening in the market, save some money on finding the best prices on the stuff that they buy most frequently. It's changing the game. It's going to be worth few $1 billion because of how much we're saving for these restaurants who really need it. Dash-dash.com. Get after it. Nicholas, do you have a
Shameless plug.
something you'd like to talk about?
I think I'm going to have to say meatchamp.com.
It's on meatchamp.com.
Yeah,
Please visit the website.
What?
Yeah, it's shocking, right?
What's on that website?
Well, I think we've talked about it a little bit, but it's condoms and lube. Please also follow us on Instagram. We're at meatchamp as our handle. So thank you very much for having me.
You guys
on.
should do a cross promotion with my friend Sarah Hoffman, who has an alcohol brand that's D2C. Because I've found that frequently alcohol is the social lubricant to the physical lubricant that is required from Meat Champ. So it's, in a way, they're both lubricants.
They are. I've heard that we're not supposed. We should stay away from doing partnerships with alcohol brands, but hey, you never know.
Hey, okay, well, one thing, people should maybe enjoy in moderation, and the other, as much as they need to, and whatever they want.
Yes.
Yes. So on that,
Anyway.
we'll end. Thanks everyone for listening, and Nico, thank you very much for being on, talking about Champ. I think it was quite an interesting talk.
All right. Well, thanks guys for having me on.
Thanks, Nick.
right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Worst People We Know was recorded, edited, and produced in the Golden State, with a little bit of help from the Sunshine State.
The Sunshine State. Gorgeous.
Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and find us on Twitter at TWPWK. PWK. Thanks.
Perfect.
What is the English version of the Navy SEALs?
The SAS.
The SAS. Okay, so this is an old SAS trick. What we do is we count backwards from 5, and we all clap on the T and 2. So right at the beginning of when I say 2.
Okay.
And then when we all clap at that time, that helps us line up the tracks later. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
So like
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2.
2.
Like you're
when we're
anticipating
clapping.
when he's going to say 2.
Okay.
So we don't like
And then you
lag.
clap
You
right as
clap
I say 2.
right as
Okay.
he's
Can you do that?
saying
Yes.
2.
We can do it twice if you screw it up.
This
Okay.
is it's actually a Navy SEAL thing. This is probably why it's confusing for him because he's more of like
Yeah.
a SAS guy.
Well,
Yeah.
and you're clapping your right hand into your left hand.
I have no idea
About
why
to
we're
say
doing
to
this,
clap
really,
on the
but
right
I'll-
hand side of the water.
Yeah.
God damn it! You fucked up my joke, you bastard. All right, on the T and 2.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah,
Good clapping.
All right, guys.
So far, you passed, Nico. We're not kicking you off yet.
yeah. A lot of people don't make it past that stage. We actually have a guest every single episode. Only like
Yeah.
10
What if I
made it
clap
through.
again?
Oh, you're fucked.
You just sound
Yeah,
desperate.
screw everything up.
Yeah.
You
So
do- you-
I have. Go ahead,
No, go ahead. That's
Sean.
fine.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to start asking about lube.
Yeah.
Did you want to bring something else up before I start talking about lube?
No, lube sounds perfect.
Why'd you have to say it so sexy, Sean?
I want to know if Nico thinks my lube exit strategy was actually going to work or not. That I texted over, I don't know, last week, 2 weeks ago,
Oh, okay.
Pretty smooth, I imagine.
over the Civil
Like, what
War. Slide down to
You're gonna-
Costa Rica. I was going to just lube up and slide down to Costa Rica.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
When the
That was
Civil War
there.
happens.
That's gotcha. Different.
We'll sell,
I
we'll
was
sell
definitely
the slide.
picturing
The slip and
somebody
slides
in
coming up next. That's our
Gray
next
wool
skill.
uniform with lube all over them. I really just wanted to create an
Who's
interruption.
clicking?
To say, are you clicking on your fucking mouse nonstop? When you're talking, don't click.
Okay.
You can click as much as you want when one of the three of us are clicking, but if you're clicking, then like we can't edit that out. And they're here, click, 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 click.
I was
Yeah,
trying
what
to
are you
find
doing?
it. I was
Are you
trying to
clicking?
find a. I was trying to find a story.
Oh, okay. That's
whatever.
all right.
Yeah, you're an investment banker. You know the fucking keyboard shortcuts.
Thanks for listening.